Let's see what's cooking. It's time for Yo-Yo Makes 12.
Hi everyone, this recipe comes from this recipe book, which is a Betty Crocker contest winners book. It was published in 1992 and I found it at a thrift store. Thought it looked interesting, and when I looked through the recipes, I found this one for cheeseburger cake. And I'm always on the lookout for unusual recipes, and that looked good with the cheese in the middle. So I thought I'd try it out for dinner that night. So in a large skillet, I placed 1 pound of lean ground beef, added a chopped up onion, and then just scramble fried this over medium-high heat until the hamburger was no longer pink, and by then the onions will get just a little bit translucent. And then you drain off any excess fat. Let it cool for just a few minutes and then put it into a large bowl. To this, add 1/2 cup of mayonnaise, 1/2 cup of tomato ketchup, and 2 teaspoons of seasoned salt, which is a lot of salt. But first time I make something, I follow the recipe. So that's what I did. Now I added about 4 ounces of jalapeno peppers. They were chopped up. Now at this point I should have added 2 tablespoons of prepared mustard, but I managed to skip over that for some reason in the recipe, so I didn't put it in. Once that's blended, add 1 egg and then stir that together well. Now to bind everything together, add 2 cups of Bisquick baking mix. If you don't have Bisquick baking mix where you live, you can find a copycat recipe on the internet by Googling Bisquick baking mix recipe or copycat Bisquick recipe, and you will find suitable mixes quite easily. Stir that together till combined. You need a springform pan, or you could put it in a casserole dish. It wouldn't really matter. Any baking dish would do. I put a little bit of wax paper in the bottom of mine because the seal on the edge of mine isn't great, and sometimes some of the food leaks through. Put half of the hamburger mix in the bottom and spread it out into an even layer. Then the recipe asks you put 8 ounces of sliced processed American or cheddar cheese. I didn't want to use the processed, so I used about 2 cups of regular shredded cheddar cheese. And then put the other half of the hamburger mixture over top and spread it out. And amazingly, the texture of this is a lot like cake mix. It's amazing. Sprinkle on 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds. That's a lot of sesame seeds. This would be optional. I did like the sesame seeds on the top because it got a little bit crunchy, but I just found there's way too many with 2 tablespoons, but would be to taste. Then bake this at 375 for about 35 to 40 minutes until the edges start to pull away and are brown. And you just run a knife along the edge to make sure it's loosened. Let it sit for about 10 minutes and then remove the sides, and it's ready to serve. And this is when I started to regret the wax paper in the bottom. First of all, I probably did need it because this wasn't all that wet and leaky. But when I tried to cut it, the wax paper was stuck really badly to this. Really badly. So it took a little bit of effort to try to get it to detach, and I left half of the recipe behind when I did so. But I did manage to get some pieces out. They weren't pretty, but I managed to get the pieces out. You can see the cheese strings there as it was all melted. Okay, let me tell you about my impressions of this. First of all, right off the bat, I will never make this again. Okay, number 1. The texture of this was very strange. It was very cake-like because of all that Bisquick that was in there. So if you could imagine taking a cheeseburger, putting it in a blender, adding an egg, and then baking it in the oven, you get this. This is essentially what it tastes like. It does taste like a cheeseburger. I like the jalapeno peppers. I do like the cheeseburger flavors that were in there, but I couldn't get past the texture of it. It's a little bit on the mushy side. It did have a nice crisp top, but overall, I didn't like the texture of it. There's certainly other Bisquick recipes that were a lot better than this one. I didn't get the nice cheese layer in the center, and I think that's because I didn't use the processed cheese like that asked for in the recipe. So I'm not going to call this one a fail because it pretty much turned out like it looked like in the photo, more or less. But it's not one that I'm certainly going to make again. But if any of you decide to give it a try or modify it, let me know.